preparing to stream live. I'll just get the slides up while we're waiting. I think we're live. Looks like we are. Oh, goody. Wonderful. We'll just wait for this to load. All of our awesomeness. Oh, that's fun. How to walk the wheel with us. So this is what we're doing today. We are walking the wheel. And before we begin, for those of you that might be new, I'm Ashley, and this is Bella, and we're part of Unlock Your Design. So as the founders of Unlock Your Design, we have an online academy where human design, gene keys, and astrology are taught as tools for self-awareness and empowerment. The mission of the academy is to guide and inspire people to embody their truth and sovereignty and to live life by design. Do you want to explain about bridging the gap, Bella?
Yes, so we speak many languages, and that's because all those languages are related. And it's a transmission, especially human design and gene keys came in 40 years ago, and they are part of the same stream. And it's a living transmission that we're all here to embody and also express if we resonate and feel aligned. And we have created something called the 64 archetypes because the 64 hexagrams, gates, or gene keys have inherently those archetypal energies. So also when we create an archetype, that is something that's easier to connect to sometimes, and also to kind of put on the costume or take off the costume of. So playing with archetypes, or even going into like archetypal psychology or archetypal shadow work or transformation work, is something that's been powerful in our journey. So that's what Unlock Your Design is using on our 64 Doors website, where you can read the descriptions, which is a combination right now of human design and gene keys. And for some of them, we are starting also to weave the astrology part. Astrology is more what we are using as a language to understand a little bit more about the modalities. You know, we are in Taurus right now. It's an earth sign and it's fixed. So that's what we can also apply to all the gates that are also in transit, or the sun is transiting in the month that we are in Taurus season. So we are using astrology to understand the gates, the archetypes more deeply. And that's why we are weaving, you could say, all these different systems. And it's the synthesis of them, because they are very, very much speaking about the same activations in the sky, just different perspectives or different language to explain those energies.
Yeah. Well said. So if you're familiar with this, this is the I Ching. And the I Ching is an ancient system of divination. So when we say we bridge the gap between these systems, this one's included. We also have astrology, which we have had for many, many, many years, for as long as we've been curious about the stars. We've been mapping them, we've been studying them, we've been creating mythology around them. And so we have unpacked what these stars and planets mean. And also, we have Gene Keys, which was founded by Richard Rudd in 2002. That's when he synthesized it. And that also came about from human design. The human design system was brought about in 1987 through Ra Uru Hu. And so these are the systems that Bella mentioned. And like she said, we bridged the gap between all of these to create the archetypes. And if you're curious about them, maybe you don't know about them, you can go to the 64doors.com and learn about it. This one in particular is highlighting the nourisher, which we'll get into in a moment, because this is what's in transit. And odds are you're here to also understand, what does it mean when we say something's in transit or we're following the transits. because we're going to be talking about walking the wheel, but in order to walk the wheel, you really need to understand the transits. So if you're not familiar with any of these systems, or maybe one and not all, you can purchase our foundations course. That is an introduction to human design, gene keys, astrology, and the 64 archetypes. And it's $25. It has, I think, 5 videos, 5 master classes in it. And it's very well done. And it's a beautiful foundation for you. So thank you so much for being here today and being curious about walking the wheel. So let's ask the question, what are we doing today? Today's going to focus on the transits, particularly the Rave Mandala, and that's what we'll probably focus on today. So let's talk about transits. So Bella's going to answer the question, what is a transit? And here's our, oh, almost. Hold on, let me bring this back up. I don't know why it came down. An error occurred. Something went wrong before you were supposed to open your mouth, Bella. I love tech things. They're so fun. Let's bring it back up. But I know most of you can read, so here we go.
So what's a transit? Transit is movement, right? So it has to do with the planets that are moving in the sky. And we'll wait. So all the 64 hexagrams, gates, gene keys, archetypes are situated around the Rave Mandala or the zodiac wheel. If we look up in the sky, we're going to have everything up there. And the sun travels around the wheel, and it takes 1 year or 365 days. And if we have 64 archetypes that the sun is moving through in 365 days, well, that means there's going to be about 6 days in each gate, exactly 5.7, or with decimals. So we know here that the sun is going to complete a full turn, we could say, a revolution around the wheel every year. And that's also why we have the chance to get to know all the archetypes, the hexagrams, and also all the zodiac signs, which is something that we're doing as well this year and that we did last year as well. And also if we go down even more into the 6 lines of every single gate. So 6 times 64 is 384 lines. And this is something that also in human design and Gene Keys, Ra has already written his line companion. You can read his descriptions of each and every line. And Richard Rudd has been writing for several years on his book that is going also to explain the lines from a completely different perspective. So when we have those two, we're going to be able to see that there are 2 very, very different ways of explaining that process through each and every hexagram. You can actually see it in the hexagram. The hexagram has 6 lines. It's built up of 6 lines. So that's what it speaks about. And we are going to propose to you this week and next week a way to work with the lines and to work our way through the whole wheel.
Mm-hmm. You may also be, if you caught this, you may be curious why we're saying that it takes a year, 365 days for the sun to travel around the wheel. And we've discovered that, right, the earth is what's revolving around the sun. The sun's not really revolving. But when we're talking about tropical astrology, it's a little bit different. Did you want to bring that in? Because that's a little bit confusing when we're talking about the sun transiting or going around the wheel, because it's not, the sun is not moving, correct?
Well, it is from our point of view, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we are on Earth, we're going to be able to see that all the planetary bodies are going to move around the wheel. And sometimes it's going to look like they stay from the Earth point of view. That's when we say they're stationing retrograde. Then it's even going to look like they're going backwards. So this is the sky. And if we are on Earth and we look up, we could say that this is a depiction of the sky. We're going to have the zodiac signs, and that's also a depiction. It's not necessarily that there's 30 degrees. If there's 360 degrees in a wheel, we, especially with, there's like the 13th sign that we speak about too, and Scorpio is much, fewer degrees. So this is a depiction, this is a model. The same thing as the body graph is the model, the same thing as the hologenetic profile with the hero's journey. It's a model too of that kind of journey that we're doing, the purpose that we're here to ground. So everything that we're using is a model of something, of the sky, of the hero's journey, of the body energy in the body graph. And from the Earth, we're going to have all the planetary bodies that are going to move in a certain pace. So, for example, Venus is a little bit quicker to move around. Mars is going to take kind of double the time, like 2 years to go around. When we go out to Neptune and Pluto, to go around the wheel, it's 165 years from Neptune and 248 years from Pluto. For Pluto, that's why we have had it in gate 61 and 60 for so long with Pluto, because it takes way more than 6 days in a gate, right? It takes years to go through a gate. So we are on Earth, and the human program is here on Earth. Even when we're looking at the incarnation cross that makes up our profiles, it's very exact from the geometry that we're using as the model here, which is not scientific, but it's what was translator or that was in the transmission of the voice that was received in 1987 for human design, which then has been transferred over to the gene keys, and that's what we're also using in tropical astrology.
Great, yes. Just to clear that up. If we look back on this mandala, you're going to see that in the center wheel, we have the astrological signs. And then right here, we have the gates or the gene keys or the archetypes, those numbers. And then on the outer ring, we have the I Ching, the hexagrams. But I want to pull up something that you can see and check in on a moment by moment basis. This is from Genetic Matrix. So Bella's pulled this up. It shows the wheel, it shows the body graph, and it gives you all of the details on the right-hand side. So if you go to geneticmatrix.com and scroll down, this is the Astro HD neutrino conditioning weather, and it will give you all these details here.
Yeah, and I love that we're seeing next to each other here the wheel and the body graph. Because if we only know astrology, we would have no idea that the theme of initiation and awakening is right now activated. Because you can't see in the wheel necessarily that gate 51 in Aries and gate 25 in Aries have really something to do with each other. Well, they're there on the wheel, kind of close, but you can't see what you see when we have the connection between the G center and the ego center. And this is also the channel that was activated for the eclipse, for the conjunction with Uranus and Jupiter, and for the full moon. So we have had that very powerfully for the last few weeks. So we can see themes that are there in the wheel with the conjunctions, with the oppositions, with the squares, like all kinds of relationships in the wheel, but also to look at the body graph to see what's there. And some of you might have looked at least at the beginning of every year, when gate 41 comes into transit, or when the sun comes into gate 41, we usually look at the body graph and we see what's defined, and we say those are the themes for the year. And we can do that on a daily basis. Those are the themes for the day, right? And then, yeah, we know that some of the planets or planetary bodies are really, really slow. So they're going to activate for a long time. So somebody who has gate 3, or, somebody that has gate 3, or, oh yeah, we can see Pluto's, is Pluto in 41? I hadn't even noticed.
Oh, look it. Pluto is in 41.
Yeah, so that's kind of the furthest Pluto has been in our lifetime. That, I mean, it's a small planet and it might not even be a planet, but the fact that it is somewhere on the wheel in an archetype, in an energy that it has never been before. And some of us might feel like it's even easier to connect what does it mean that Pluto is in the originator archetype, the 41, might be easier to be, and then to say, what does it mean that Pluto is in the first degrees of Aquarius? So walking the wheel is also to understand that there is there is this correlation. To say that something is in the beginning of Aquarius is the same thing as saying, if we look at the wheel, that it might be in gate 41 or in gate 19. That would be the beginning of Aquarius. So it's equivalent. So we don't necessarily even need to know a lot about astrology, but yet just using the wheel, we can say, oh, okay, there's a lot of Aries energy, and that is in this case represented by the archetype thunder that has to do with awakening and initiation. So we can speak about the Aries activation. You see the three, the North Node and Mercury and Chiron. We can speak about that as the theme of gate gene key hexagram 51. Then knowing, oh, what does Aries mean exactly, right? In those degrees where we have that conjunction.
Mm-hmm. When you start to look at where things are activated and by what planet, you can unpack based on what you know about the planet, about the zodiac sign, about the line. And so when you educate yourself on the planets using astrology, when you educate yourself on the gate, human design, gene key, our archetypes, the I Ching, you are getting different details from each of them. And if you've been inside of our archetype courses, you know that our teaching video, we go into each of these separate areas to explain something about each part of this archetype. So the line, the gate, the zodiac sign, all of that stuff. And we're going to go into gate 27 today because the sun is in gate 27. And if you make it simple and you just walk the wheel by following the gate that the sun is in transit, you will start to learn a heck of a lot about each of these archetypes, because over the course of a year, you are going to get to know all 64 of them. And that's pretty exciting. It's a little bit difficult to plan your day around the moon transit because that moves pretty quickly, and you'll have to really keep an eye on the phone and, oh, it just transited. Oh, it just transited. And reflectors, this is kind of what they do anyways. And they have an app on the phone where you can follow the moon transit, but the moon's not going to impact us as much as the sun does. The sun has conditioning weather. We're going to talk a little bit about neutrinos a little bit later, but it's significant. We are programmed by it. And if you're not aware of it, if you're not conscious of it, it is unconsciously going to influence you. And so we want to make the unconscious conscious. We want to make the unaware aware. So yeah, let's look at this one. You can see how much in the minutia you can get with all the different aspects of this Rave mandala, of this wheel. There's many sections of this. Did you want to speak a little bit on this picture, Bella?
And yeah, this is our depiction in Unlock Your Design, where we wanted to map as much as possible everything that we could. So we have the I Ching in the middle, which is 8 elements, which are the trigrams that are building up each hexagram. So wherever we go, to whatever gate or hexagram we go, they are going to be a combination of this. So for example, we just spoke about the 51. The 51 is going to be thunder over thunder. Then in each and every element, we're going to have one gate that is 2 of the same. So then we go to the earth one, and then we are going to have the second gate that is earth over earth. And then we go to the mountain, and we're going to have the 52 that is mountain over mountain. And all the other ones are going to be a combination of 2, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the I Ching way of like looking at how everything changes in the elements, in the seasons, we could say. And then you also see that we have the zodiac signs that are elements, 4 different elements. There are 3 different modalities: cardinal, fixed, or mutable. And they also have a polarity. So each of the 12 signs are either feminine or masculine. And then what else do we have here? We have a color coding, Ashley. Would you speak about the little dots? What are they coding for?
They're coding for the codon rings. And in the PDF version of this image, it has a little key on the bottom where it is going to match the dots to a color so that you can see what codon ring each of these gates are associated with. And generally they kind of come close together on the wheel. So you'll see a pattern happening there. And each of the codon rings are associated with a different amino acid that we find in our DNA that's going to code for something in our body. And so you can even get into the body aspect of it or the physiology of it, and details, details. It's all details. We also have the HD quarters, right? Quarter of initiation, civilization, duality, and mutation. And on the inside, we have those astrological quarters, where if we're starting with Aries in the zodiac wheel, this is where we're becoming aware of ourselves. And then as we move into Cancer, it's integration of self with your environment. Then when we move into Libra, awareness of others. And then we get even a bigger perspective where it's integration of self with society as we're moving into the later zodiac signs. So there's a progression on this wheel. And it's interesting because many people will talk about different zodiac New Years. And as we are following the Gregorian calendar, we find that our zodiac New Year, or not zodiac, our new year for the new like 2024 is going to start in gate 38-ish. It changes maybe a couple days every now and then, but this is going to be the start of our new year. And then, like Bella said, we also have gate 41, which is also considered a new year. Or we move over to when we get into Aries season in gate 25. That's a new year because we're going into a new the zodiac sign Aries that corresponds with the first house, the house of self, where we are becoming aware of ourselves. So there's many different ways to begin, and the way that the Rave Mandala begins things is actually going to be in the third gate. And so that is the beginning, where the 42 is actually endings, completions, closure. And this is the gate of endings. And so when we're ending, now we get to start something new. So you're probably feeling these micro endings and beginnings happening on the wheel because we're not all aligned with the same start time, because it just depends based on when you're beginning something. We can even go to the quarter of initiation and say that's the beginning of something. So many beginnings, many endings. And so the simplest way to do it as well is to just follow each of these gates and contemplate and feel what you're feeling and learn what you need to learn about it. And each rotation and iteration, you'll be able to feel the nuances of things. You'll be able to feel when things shift. I remember when I started to really get in rhythm and in sync with these transits, I could tell when an archetype changed. I could wake up in the middle of the night and be like, "Whoa, something is shifting." Particularly if I had a resonance or connection or friction with that archetype, I could feel when it was coming in. So I don't know, how about you, Belle? Are you starting to notice when things shift and change as we're moving through things?
Yeah, definitely. And I feel that, you and I having had that sounding board for years now, it's also what we geek away on because it's so telling that you cannot not kind of laugh at it and sometimes cry with it and sometimes just like see how actually, yes, we are part of a bigger geometry, and it's like holons in holons, it's like hologenetic. So it's we are part of that bigger geometry. So definitely, and it is spirals, and it is kind of cool to even think back like a year ago and a year before that and a year before that and start to know those transits. And for us, usually maybe we remember our birthday, what did I do last year on my birthday, but then it becomes like all the time kind of those themes. So definitely. I wanted to mention two more things. So the other thing that's coded for is the centers in the body graph. And the body graph is amazing because it shows us in our own personal body graph, it shows us how we are in our energy metabolism, we could say, or our energy dynamics. So wherever we have a defined center is where we touch the world. Wherever we have a white center or undefined center is where energy comes in. So energy direction. And here you can see on the wheel the code. So for example, if you look up to the right, you're going to see a lot of yellow on the outer side. And that goes back to the yellow center, which is a splenic center. So you can also see the same thing as Ashley was saying with the codon ring, which is kind of the bigger geometry that's connected to our DNA and the 64 codons in that way. Well, you can see similarly here that when we go down to the earth element, where we have in Gemini, we have a lot of throat gates. And then when we go upwards as the fire element, we have a lot of solar plexus gates. So there are going to be different parts of the year or different parts in our makeup and different themes, we could say, emotional themes that are close to Pisces. And then we have in Gemini, a lot of the communication of the throat, of the manifestation and the communication. And then when we are up Libra, Scorpio, Libra more than anything, we have the splenic gates, which are the fears, but also kind of the presence and the breath and the immune system. And it's going to be those possibilities of tuning into different things that are also connected both to like the body as such, but also themes in our lives. And the last thing I want to say is that everything is a cycle or a process. Like nothing, everything in this universe, even us, right? We're just a process. So we're going to get born sometimes and die sometimes. But then there are cycles, like what happens in between, after we're dead and until we're born again. So whether we are looking at a hexagram, so the little symbols that are around the wheel where you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they're either broken lines or full lines. That's a process that we're going to speak about today. That is 6 lines starting from the foundation, going all the way through all the chakras or elements or line until it starts over again. The same thing with the zodiac signs. It's 12 signs. So we could even go and look at that and say the 2 first signs correspond to the first line of foundation. And then at the end, when we come to the 2 last signs, which is Aquarius and Pisces, that is the 6th line. So we could even go and say Aquarius and Pisces is 6th line, and then Aries and Taurus is 1st line. And then you do like that with the whole wheel. So to really start to understand that it's just different languages to explain those processes that we're coming in and out of. And the more aware we become about those processes, the more we're able to kind of play with them and feel them and embody them. That's evolution in a sense of, higher evolution, we could say, not just evolution, that everything is always changing, but to be able to weave with more awareness and deeper embodiment. And that's really part of what the Academy and Unlock Your Design is about. How can we do that? Because it's way more fun to weave and spiral in the gift frequency, kind of stable on that human pathway of being able to unlock more and more, than to kind of, even if the shadows can be fertile and can give us insights, to always be down in the darkness, in the shadows, and kind of trying to make the unconscious conscious. It's also something that can become a bit heavy. So the more we're able to bring in the awareness and the embodiment, the more we can, by choice, face those, aspects that are more unconscious and more difficult to face from a place where we still have that core stability. And that's really why we are also using the gene keys as the hero's journey of like walking the pathways that are mapped in the hologenetic profile.
Yeah, so quite a lot here, quite a lot to go into. If you have started with the gene keys, most likely you're not aware of the connection to the body graph, you're not aware of the connection to the zodiac sign, etc. You might have noticed that the I Ching hexagrams are in the book. So in the chapter of the book, Richard does put the hexagrams, but we don't really talk about the I Ching or anything in there. But you've probably seen these hexagrams that are made up in yin and yang lines. And then with human design, it's not going to mention gene keys at all, and it did come before it. And so as we came after human design and gene keys, we have made it a priority and part of our mission to include all of them and to make sure that we're mentioning all of them. Because yes, they are separate systems and they are amazing in their own right. It's that pieces of information and gems and little nuggets of awesomeness are in each of these. So why not combine them together? And that was kind of the mission that Bella and I had when we started the 64 doors together in 2020 by combining all of these. So let's go back to the I Ching. Let's go back to the 27 and just give you a piece by piece snippet of what is the 27 based on these different systems. So if we start with the I Ching, and remember those are the hexagrams built of yin and yang lines, we're going to see that the 27 right here is going to be made up of mountain over thunder. We're not going to go into what that means, but if you dig into the I Ching, you can understand about mountain and you can understand about thunder. And if you marry them both together, that is what makes up hexagram 27. And this one's called nourishment in the I Ching. And you can go into the I Ching system and learn more about it. And maybe you'll find something that you resonate with within that will give you an indication or a piece of information that will help you on your own self-discovery journey. Because we tend to start these for ourselves, to learn about it for ourselves. And then eventually we're like, oh, let me see what my partner is. Let me see what my mom, let me see what this and that. And that's where we also start to see patterns within the patterns and why people come into our life the way that they come into our life and what resonances we have. Okay. And then Bella's going to bring in the astrological component of this. So if we zoom in on the astrology wheel, what are we noticing about the 27?
That it is in Taurus, and it's in the beginning of Taurus. It's kind of where Taurus starts in the beginning. And like we said before, there are qualities that we can use from astrology, like earth element and fixed and feminine, that are going to help us understand more about the gates or archetypes that live in this part of the wheel, because that's usually how we speak about it. The archetypes are living somewhere in the body graph in a center, but it's also living on the zodiac wheel in a sign. So it's how we can understand more about the functioning and the qualities that each and every archetype has.
So I Ching, astrology, and then moving into human design, we're going to locate the gate 27. It's in the sacral center, and it's part of this channel that is actually also reaching for the 50, which is in the splenic center. So here, if we can dig into the center, your sacral is about life force, creativity, sexuality, sensuality. It's the juice. It's the juiciness of life. It's where we are producing energy. You can think of the sun as what is giving us energy, and the sacral center as what's producing, what's generating energy. And so if you know anything about human design, you also know that when we talk about strategy and authority, some people have a defined sacral, which makes them generators or manifesting generators. And some people have undefined, which projectors, manifestors, reflectors. And if we focus on the 27 in particular, this is going to be a generated channel, meaning that we're moving life force energy throughout the body graph. So the 27 is responsible for nurturing, for nourishment, for education of the younger generation. You can go into more details of what gate 27 means, but just an overview, the fact that it sits in the sacral center is going to give it access to life force energy, creativity, all of these really amazing things that are going to power the vessel, power the vehicle.
Yeah, and I think there's just one more thing with the body graph that is something that we are always including, which is the circuitry. So we can see that there are different pathways in the body graph, and some of you that maybe know more about the tree of life, you know also about the pathway that connects the different sephirot in the tree of life. So here we are going to know for the 27 that it's in tribal circuitry. So it cares about those themes that have to do with community and with family, and also with the material plane, because if you have a community, it needs to survive. So just by knowing the pathways within the body graph, you're going to be able to know what each and every. And suddenly, when you read the Gene Key book, you're going to be like, oh, that makes so much sense, because of course 27, it's in the tribal circuitry. Of course it's going to care about these things. And then even reading the Gene Keys and understanding the frequency bands and the dynamics there, it's going to be so much more easy. And when you know those gates that are together. So the first way that you can also see that they connect with each other is, of course, this 27 is meeting the 50. Of course, they have to do with each other. But then when you know the circuitry, you know that it goes somewhere from there and it connects with something else. So all these that are connecting in the same circuitry care, we could say, about similar things. So that's also why the body graph is so cool in mapping, because we get to know so much without having to remember every little detail heart by heart, by heart, when it comes to like the gene keys, that where we don't really know the connection between one and another.
Mhm. Let me get our cool slides back up. I'm having all sorts of technical difficulties. That's okay. We roll with it. Mercury. Is Mercury still in retrograde?
Until
Can we blame
tomorrow. That's why you were late. You were hoping it was going to go direct.
Darn. I don't even know. My sense of time and timing and technology seems to be so interesting right now. But that's okay. I'm sure I could dig into my chart and dig into what's happening and unpack it and then have an understanding. And if we're going to go that way, then eventually these systems will not, you won't need these systems, because you'll be able to surrender and you'll be able to trust yourself and you'll be able to feel the rhythm. You'll be able to feel the flow. You'll be able to know yourself, and you can just be in the world without needing to make everything mental for your understanding pleasure. But let's move into gene keys. So Richard brought us the gene keys, and the 27th gene key has frequency bands. So Richard has his book, The Gene Keys. It's pretty thick. There are chapters on each of the 64 gene keys, gates, hexagrams, archetypes. He calls them gene keys, and he has given them frequency bands. And so there's a shadow, there's a gift, and there's a city. And the shadow of the 27 is selfishness, the gift is altruism, and the city is selfishness. He also has identified a dilemma and a victim pattern and a repressive and reactive side of the shadow. Inside our archetype courses, we do go into all of these as well. So we do have in-depth teachings for the system as well. And there are cool little nuggets of wisdom that Richard has sprinkled everywhere. He even did some stuff with human design. There's the circuitry book that is really cool. And like Bella said, he's working on all of the lines of the 64 gene keys. And then he has the 64 ways, which was an audio contemplation that he turned into a book, and the art of contemplation. And he is really an advocate for contemplation. So while he will give you a really poetic and beautiful way of explaining these gene keys, he really wants you to take it and walk with it in your life and start to contemplate it and see what's resonating, what is unfolding from me, what is the world showing me. So the art of contemplation is at the center of the gene key teachings. And so that is the way that you walk with this system in particular. Okay. And then last but not least, we have the 64 doors. These are our inner archetypes. And like I said, Bella and I created these in 2020, bringing through the descriptions of it from all of our knowledge and wisdom and resources that we've gathered from astrology, gene keys, human design. Bella has carefully crafted the copy, and it's developed over time. And we have either created the artwork for it or commissioned an artist to create the artwork. So we did have a couple painters that painted some of them. Otherwise, the digital vectors, the digital artwork came from my graphic design background, and we created a website for them. But for now, we will introduce them here, and the one that's in transit is the 27. So let's unlock this one. What do we call this archetype, Bella?
Nourisher.
Yay. This artwork was created by Lindsay Foy. She did a handful of custom paintings. I actually have some of them in my house, but this artwork is here to help you contemplate the nourisher and to feel into its frequencies. You can do that through the visual aesthetic of the art, the website, the journey you take in that, and then the copy or the description of the archetypes that you read. And I highly encourage you to check the website out. But Bella, can you give us the details of the nourisher? This
Yes,
over.
so we can see that we are in the transit of the nourisher right now. So it is in transit from the 22nd to the 27th of April. In human design, we call this the gate of caring. In the I Ching, this hexagram is called nourishment. In the gene keys, like Ashley said before, the shadow frequency is selfishness, the Siddhic frequency is selflessness, and then the human pathway that we are anchoring into, as more and more as we come into our core stability, is altruism.
So this is an overview of all of it. And these are generally what we show on our walking the wheel calls. And if you're not familiar with those, we have them every Tuesday at 11 Pacific and 2 Eastern. And we have conversations around these archetypes that are in transit. So how about we come back to walking the wheel? Because with this series, we want to help you understand how to walk the wheel. And before we could even dig into the process of walking the wheel, we really needed to make sure you understood, one, the systems, and two, the transits. And that's going to include the sun. Before we dig into what is walking the wheel, do you think that there's anything that anybody needs to know?
I feel like, there is both the moment that you were born that creates your unique design, and then the program that we're all, you could say, swimming or floating in, which is the geometry that is made up of all the archetypes and the whole body graph and all the different characteristics of the zodiac signs. So this is the program, we could say, that we are swimming in, or the matrix, maybe is what we're gonna say. And the more we can interact and understand the matrix, and also from a kind of objective overview, the easier it is to realize that we are in the program, but we're not necessarily slaves under this program. We're not, at least, unconscious slaves of the program. And it can also become quite fun. Like Ashley says, at the end of the day, we're not going to necessarily need the systems. It's not like they're crutches that we're going to need, but it's very fun to also have people that speak a similar language, where you can call Ashley and say, you can't you can't believe, but this is the date that this person was born, and they had this archetype 5 times, blah blah blah. Like, it becomes also just something that when you have other people that you can share this kind of language and understanding, it also shows you that your intuition is so on point many times, and that there are certain themes in your life that you're going to attract, and that they have something for you. So whether those are themes that are in the shadow, or themes that are just amazing, that, like, expand in your life, it's part of your design and this incarnation to be able to meet and play with and work with those themes.
Yeah, and we've been walking the wheel individually for quite some time. And as we've come together, we found new ways of walking the wheel. And so as we were digging into these systems and starting to put them into archetypes, we created the free resource that's online, right? The 64 doors. And that's a way that you can contemplate, dig into these archetypes, or you can do it in a community. So you can do this journey alone, or you can do it with people. And when you do it alone, you're in your own energy. You can make your pacing. You can decide what resources and materials to go into. You really have control over the way that you want to dig into things. And you can decide if you're going to walk the wheel as things go into transit, or if maybe you're picking out an archetype to focus on that is in a particular zodiac sign. You're like, okay, I am going to walk with the 25 during Aries season, or I'm going to walk with the 2 during Taurus season, and really decide how long you're going to be initiated by these. And you can be initiated every 6 days and follow the transits like that. But obviously you're limited with time, so you're not going to get into everything. So we created that free resource for you. We have the walking the wheel calls, like we said, on Tuesdays, where we gather around the archetype and it's a discussion. We usually create the foundation for it and remind you what that archetype is. We do a little bit of teaching around it, and then we go into discussion. But what we also have, and what has been with us since the beginning of things, is the inner circle as well. And I'll just speak about this briefly. But the inner circle is a way that we're walking the wheel together. And we always follow the transits. We even have Yosei and Mary that are contributors coming into the inner circle that are actually going through each of the lines and creating discussions around them and sharing information around it. And we have focuses each month. And we go into a zodiac season, and we have Q&As, we have archetype workshops, and everybody in the inner circle gets access to the archetype courses that we created. And some of you are familiar with those because those did come out progressively through the years, right? We made the archetypes, and then we made the courses for them. And then we started to utilize the things that we were making in different programs and also memberships. So the inner circle is a membership. And so people are walking with us in the inner circle, and it's a way that you can do this in community. And some people are self-pacing themselves, and some people are showing up to the live calls, but it is a place to walk the wheel. So we have an online free version of Walking the Wheel. We have the Inner Circle, which is like this paid membership where we are helping you pace and learn about the astrological components of things. And it's been amazing to be able to see how everybody is learning the language. And I think that has been really fun for Bella and I to be able to have more people to speak these languages with. And that's been a pleasure. So yeah, I think that's what I wanted to say. We'll talk a little bit more about our process of walking the wheel tomorrow and the 6 stages of embodiment. And that's going to dig into the lines more. But one of the questions we did want to answer is, why should you walk the wheel? And walking the wheel is going to be so beneficial in many different ways. But if any of you have heard of Bruce Lipton, he's the author of The Biology of Belief, and he's actually he's a scientist. And so he is really interested in consciousness and how we can epigenetically change our lives. Like, we are not victims of our genetics. And he says that in quantum physics, it recognizes that consciousness is creating your life experience. And so the deduction we can get from that is that if you change your consciousness, you change your life experiences. And so this has been the premise of a lot of his work and why he wrote Biology of Belief. And why am I saying this? I'm saying this because according to quantum physics, if we break things down and we look at what is consciousness, consciousness is an energy field. What is a field? It's invisible moving forces that influence the physical world. And if we take these together, the conclusion is that spirit is an energy field that is influencing what we are. And so if we think about the greater collective, the greater consciousness, because we've got our own consciousness and there's a greater consciousness, we think about the sun, the field that we are in is influenced by the sun, and the source of the energy of our solar system is that sun. The sun produces neutrinos. Now, I hope that I'm not losing you, but I think that it's really important for us to understand that we are being influenced by the cosmic weather. Neutrinos are the smallest particle that carries mass. And if something carries mass, it carries information. And if something carries information, we can read it, we can understand it. And so because they are so small and they move so fast, the sun is pushing out a large percentage of these neutrinos. Jupiter gives us a little bit of neutrinos because it's such a big planet. But in general, our solar system is being programmed by the sun. and the sun is putting out these neutrinos. So if the sun is in gate 27, the program or neutrinos the program is being encoded in those neutrinos because it's being generated from the core of the sun. Those neutrinos are being pushed out and are being taken in by all of us, by the planet, by everything. We're being influenced by it. And it's a program, it's a story. And when you are not aware of the program, when you are not aware of the curriculum, you don't understand your assignment. So guess what happens? You unconsciously walk around bumping into the shadows of things and just reacting to the energy because you're not aware that it's in you, in front of you. It's non-physical, it's energetic. And the more we can become sensitive to the influences that we have around us, within us, other people, we start to become conscious creators. And so these systems help us understand. So these systems give us conscious awareness of the energy roadmap that lives within us, aka your human design body graph, and outside of us, aka the cosmic curriculum. We're interacting with it all. You are not an island. You are not in a bubble. You are consistently being impacted and influenced by your external environment, which includes the people around you, the cosmic weather, everything. We are being impacted by it. And so we get to either be conscious creators or unconsciously manipulated, but you get to choose. And that's why these systems are really empowering, because we get to choose. We get to become more and more aware of the program, more and more aware of what's alive in the cosmos. And we get to take that cosmic curriculum and we get to learn, we get to grow. We're here for growth. We're here for expansion. At least that's what I'm here for. You can believe that too. And I feel like I'm a forever student. And so I've started to learn from the cosmic curriculum. And that's allowed me to better myself because I'm consistently working on what's defined in me and what I'm interacting with. So if you've heard of conditioning, we've got conditioning in our defined centers and conditioning in our open centers. We are going to be influenced by people around us and by the culture, by the collective, by the cosmos. And so we get to become conscious creators if we choose to. Did you want to respond to any of that, Bella, or chime in?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I like this fifth line practical explanation of it because it's quite complex, but you made it really simple and really powerful. And I think that the part that I would add here is just that, it's all about embodying that higher awareness so that when we walk around in this program in the world, we can do that in a higher frequency, and we might see a little bit more harmony instead of the corruption and the war and the killing each other. So the more that we are able to bring down those higher frequencies, this higher awareness, being conscious creators, it's going to look very different on Earth. And that's, as a 4-6, that's what I am very excited about. How can we bring the future here? How can we bring enlightenment into the body? How can we have that spirit that we were speaking about that comes in and interacts, meet the soul, which is that individuated soul consciousness, we could say, or the accumulation of all the wisdom that the soul has as it lived through many, many incarnations. And that's also what the human design and the gene keys are having in their coding, because it's where we start to look at a date that is not our birth date. We include another date, which is a date that speaks more to this meeting point of soul and spirit, and everything that is encoded in our DNA that isn't junk, but that we are waking up to. So I think that this is the bigger conversation of why walking the wheel. Is it just because, oh, it's so cool to be able to speak these languages and to be able to throw out numbers and be so kind of intellectual intelligent? No, it's really about what's happening on this planet, and we're going into times that are even more upheaval than what we have seen. And then it's so important to know, like Ashley say, who we are, what's the conditioning, who are we really? And as we are aligned with that, when spirit and soul can meet within us, it's also a completely different journey to walk on this earth, as so many things are changing. And you probably have heard 2027, which is where we go into what we call a 6-line reality, where the only true compass is going to be that you have more contact with all your kind of cellular wisdom. You're going to have contact with different kinds of awareness. So instinctive awareness, logical awareness, emotional awareness. And that's going to be kind of your Trinity compass to even be able to walk in the world. So as we start to learn about that and tap into those different part of ourselves, we are also much better equipped for whatever is going to happen. And also for relationships, because we start to see the uniqueness in every human being. We start to treat them as by design instead of imposing our rules, our opinions, our values on the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and can we respect every person as a conscious creator, whether we would make those decisions or not, whether we would express that way or not? We get to give people the right they were birthed with to be able to create their own reality, whether they're doing it consciously or unconsciously. That doesn't matter. What do you choose to do? What do you choose to interact with? Who do you decide to be? And then who do you decide to, you know, center yourself around, include yourself in? And I think it's cool to be able to discern and decide what we're about, what we're for, and we start to feel into our purpose of being in here. And then when you can be grounded in that purpose of being, you start to meet your right allies. You start to come into communities that feel right. You may not have been biologically born into something that feels right and correct for you, but maybe your journey is to uncover how to align by design, how to be in the correct environment, how to be yourself, and the freedom that comes with unlocking that sense of sovereignty. And you're like, oh, this is what it feels like to be a conscious creator. And I think there's levels of it that we're unpacking every day. And the more the world shows us contrast and control, the more we get to choose to be free, to be sovereign, regardless of what's happening externally, because this world can be hell and it can be heaven. But which one are you deciding to unlock within yourself, regardless of what's happening outside of you? Can you find inner peace and unity within yourself? What is this mission on earth for you? Is it unity? Is it peace? Is it universal love? What is it that you're here to unlock? Is it sacrifice? Is it selflessness? What's there for you? Yeah. So, like everything, this is an invitation. This is optional. But we want you to come into relationship with the many aspects of yourself. And this is why we created the 64 archetypes, because if you can become aware of and integrate the shadows of the not self of these archetypes of yourself, you get to start to embody your true self. You get to realize your sovereignty. But we got to meet those places and spaces that are uncomfortable. We can't stay in our comfort zone. There's no growth or expansion that happens in the comfort zone. And so as we're walking the wheel together, we're meeting all 64, and you can realize, what do I jive with? What don't I? And if you're not jiving with something, that's an invitation for exploration. Why? Why is this one hard every single transit? And how can we create a better relationship within ourselves? And when you can create a relationship where you know yourself, where you are in peace and harmony within yourself, guess what? Your external reality changes too. So I think that we're here to transform and rebirth on the inside so that we can transform and rebirth a new reality externally. But we're not going to do that by doing something out in the world, especially if it comes from a place of misalignment and not enoughness and not feeling whole and sovereign in yourself. And I think that's where, again, we come back to the 27. That's where altruism lives. Know yourself, fill your cup first, and you can care for others when you have cared for yourself. The overflow is what makes it possible versus the resentment or the expectation that can come from caring to get. And caring to get is not altruistic. It's selfish. But we're selfish humans, so it's okay. Forgive yourself if you are a selfish human. Selfish humans are who we are. Yeah. So tomorrow we've got more. think we'll stay on today if there's any questions as well, because we would love to clarify anything. But tomorrow we're going to dig deeper. We're going to go into the archetypes. We're going to go into the lines, and we're going to introduce the 6 stages of embodiment. And this is how you walk the wheel with the 6 stages of embodiment. So yes, you can be introduced to the archetype that's in transit. And you can also follow a process that's going to help you get the most out of the archetype. Not like sucking it dry. That's not what we're doing. Getting the most out of it through a process of building through the lines, through the 6 lines, through the 6 stages. And that's going to help you embody that archetype, especially if you do it over and over and over again.
Yeah, and learning about those lines is also going to help so much when you're decoding your own chart, your gene key chart for all the spheres, or the human design chart to see all the decimals. What do they mean? So the stages of embodiment is something that's both, again, in the bigger geometry of things as a process, but also helping you to understand your own makeup, your own chart way better. And it also has a connection to, like we said before, the chakra system and the elements. So sometimes it can be easier to tune into a line or a stage to kind of go to a color or an element or a place in the body. So the way of bringing it also into embodiment, and not just having it as an intellectual concept, but how does it feel? Where do we find it? How does it flow? How does it move? That's very important. And that's how intimately we want to get into all the archetypes, and into our own body and our own being and our own process, so that there are not some places that remain numb and some places that remain half dead, but we're here to, to actually come into more of the true self. And there are going to be little pockets where probably we have signed out, or we have numbed, where we have escaped. And these archetypes and this kind of work, like Ashley was just mentioning, is also about going to those places where there's more to unlock, where there's more fuel. Because when something is wound up, it's not really serving anything. But when we can start to open, that's when we regenerate. And I guess, the moon was just in 28, which the full moon was just in 28 yesterday, right? Where the earth is still now. And that is the gene key of immortality. So there are going to be new ways of regenerating. And I feel that those new systems that are only like 40 years old have a lot of the keys, the codon rings, the Merkaba. Like our vehicle is changing. And AI and all these things, technology is changing really fast. But what if we can come into our true self so much and realize our sovereignty? I wonder if our script is not also upgrading in a very quickening pace, as also is the kind of more artificial intelligence.
It has to. Yeah, that's amazing. So thank you for joining us for How to Walk the Wheel. If you have any questions, please put it in the chat. I know, Jennifer, you had your hand raised. Did you want to speak? Do you want to talk? Was that a mistake? Let's see the chat.
Do you want them to put it in the Q&A? Maybe it's easier if you just if you have a question, put it in the Q&A, so that whatever was in the chat, it's there. If you still feel like there is something that is unclear, I do see you're asking about the recording. So if you are signed up, you will have the recording, the raw recording, the way it was. It's already on our YouTube, Unlock Your Design. So you can go and watch it right away if you want, if you had to do something else in the meantime and wasn't completely connected. And yeah, as long as you're signed up, you'll even get emails with everything. There's like a landing page where you can
yeah, the replays are there on the landing page. If you've explored the landing page too, you'll know that something is coming because it's at the bottom of the landing page. So if you're into secrets, we kind of have a little bit of spilling the beans on there. So if you want to sign up for what's next with us, you can. Which it's already something that's included in the inner circle. So inner circle members, you don't need to buy it. It's included. So you can join our process, or you can go in the inner circle. But tomorrow we're going to go into the 6 stages of embodiment. And then once we introduce the 6 stages of embodiment, we're going to do the 6 stages of embodiment together. And that's going to be the experience or the journey that we go into. So, yes, the replay will be up on that landing page. And like Bill said, in the YouTube page. So I didn't hear anything from Jennifer, even though she has her hand up.
No, I
think
mean, sometimes you just touch something that you're not supposed to touch, right? It's life.
It's life. Yep, exactly. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And we look forward to continuing the series, How to Walk the Wheel, with you. And we are thrilled to be able to introduce you to the 6 stages of embodiment coming up next.
Yay. Thank
Thank
you.
you.